Hello, and thank you for joining us on Overtime tonight. We are going live with an interesting story. Larry Elder is a California Republican who is running for governor. He is opposing Newsom, who is actually also the target of a recall campaign. Recall campaigns in California against the governor are extraordinarily common. They happen actually more often than regular elections. And part of Elder's approach is both to support the recall and to also run against him if the governor is in fact recalled. Of course, it makes it easier to defeat whoever goes in his place. So it's part of his entire campaign, really, to unseat the governor and become governor himself. Today, his website, Mr. Elder's website, posted an online form for the massive fraud which they claim they have detected in the recall vote. The website claims to have detected this fraud in the results of the California recall election, quote, resulting in Governor Newsom being reinstated as governor. Now, unfortunately, this is part of what is a growing tactic, especially on the Republican side, of calling into question the validity of elections. The reason this is a rather big no-no in democracies is because that is all that makes a democracy. If you cannot ensure the election process, there is no such thing as a democracy. This is where violence ensues and the whole system falls apart. Now, I'm not advocating for ignoring any sort of genuine fraud, but I am against using the claims of fraud as a tactic to win, because you do not undermine confidence in the system, at least not unjustifiably and unnecessarily. You certainly don't do it for personal reasons. What makes this claim interesting is two things. First of all, the evidence that they have that this election has, quote, the results of this recall vote were fraudulent. The evidence that they have for that is a statistical tool called Bentons Law, which I will be discussing in a minute. It's an interesting law and covers an interesting phenomenon, but nonetheless, we'll cover that in a second. But what is slightly more interesting is that while he on his website is claiming that he has proof that the results of the recall election were fraudulent, the election's tomorrow. The election is tomorrow. He is preparing, obviously, to claim fraud. There can be no possible evidence that the results are fraudulent, since there are no results of the election yet. It's tomorrow. So what is Bentons Law? Bentons Law is an interesting law regarding large numbers occurring naturally. If you have numbers, any number, 15, 1,000, 1,622, if you have a large set of numbers, what has been discovered, interestingly, is that the first digit in large amounts of numbers is often a 1. In fact, the number 1 is the first digit in a number 30% of the time. The number 9 is the first digit in a number only 5% of the time. This is not made up. This is real. And in fact, the IRS uses this law to try to detect fraud, to determine when any number of statements that they're receiving, financial statements, are fraudulent, because those financial statements should follow this law. And what you will find is, naturally, the number 1 will appear first in 30% of the numbers on any spreadsheet. The number 9 will appear sorry, will appear. The number 1 will appear 30% of the time. It will appear first, and the number 9 will appear first 5% of the time. It's just the way numbers work out. There's any number of reasons for this if you want to get into the real minutia of it, but it's a law. It's true. It does work. However, Theodore P. Hill, who is a professor emeritus of mathematics at Georgia Tech, has stated that he was asked by Reuters, who has been actively pursuing mathematicians to see whether or not the law can be used this way, and he has said that while you can use this to detect numbers that are suspicious, there are any number of reasons other than fraud that results may appear to violate this law. It's a statistical law. It's not one that always is 100% followed, but when it's violated, there can be any number of reasons for it, fraud being one of them. Quote, I'd like to stress that Bentons Law cannot be used to prove fraud. It is a red flag test. It can raise doubts. The IRS has been using it for decades to ferret out fraudsters, but only by identifying suspicious entries, at which time they put their auditors hard to work. Whether or not a data set actually follows the law is not proof of anything. Indeed, this law has actually been used repeatedly to, quote, prove fraud. The countries that most commonly use this law to prove fraud include, but are not limited to, let me pull up my list here, Russia, Venezuela, and Iran have repeatedly used this law to indicate that massive fraud has occurred, usually against the incumbent. So, and what I'm going to do right now is the live chat is not up on this, so I've been unable to see it. What we have here is a, yeah, the live chat is down. I apologize. So I am going to drop in on the live chat in a minute and check. It's going to be a short show. I wanted to make sure we got this show done before the election because I think this is one of those areas where we would like to plant a flag and point out that, and it appears as if he may not have deliberately, clearly the website, Larry Elder's website has been preparing to claim fraud and to claim proof of fraud that has led to the governor's, quote, reinstatement. He's actually still governor. It's not that he's going to be reinstated. He's going to be failed to be removed. Those are two different things. So this entire website kind of smacks of amateurish behavior. Nonetheless, he is a legitimate contender for the governor of California and has obviously prepared and has not actually taken down the link to the page where he is encouraging people to report fraud. He is encouraging, and he is not suggesting that they report fraud if and when they see it, just that they report fraud, saying again that he has proven it using a statistical model that A, cannot prove it on data that B, does not exist yet, because the election's tomorrow. So this is something that this is not worth reporting nearly as much the day of. This just came across. Bregman was good enough to put it up, which I appreciate. It's you know, not, we don't have an active shooter, yay. But I felt that this was worth taking the time and is I think a general indication of where we are headed in this country in terms of undermining elections. This man has clearly set up the entire process to say that he can prove the election is a fraud before the election has even happened. I keep saying an election. It's actually a recall vote, but so I am misspeaking. President Trump has, in fact, weighed in on this, and I do believe I'm actually, let me see where I may have moved. Yes, indeed I did. So I'm going to get up what Trump had to say about this, and then let me just double check and see if I got it there. Yeah, statement by Donald J. Trump, 45th President of the United States. Does anybody really believe that the California recall election isn't rigged. Millions and millions of mail-in ballots will make this just another giant election scam, no different but less blatant than the 2020 presidential election. I don't care what he has to say on any topic. I will say that he is the one who has popularized and legitimized these kinds of tactics, and it's really extraordinarily sad. So, and it is, I would like to actually, I will read one more statement that I thought was eloquent on the topic. This was, Newsom is, by the way, expected to survive the recall, and they believe that he will, in fact, not be recalled, at which point, presumably, he was going to, the opposition was going to release this website. They apparently just released it early. Let's see. What I'd like to do, there was a very eloquent, yes, all right. Senior fellow at New American, it's a think tank. He studies democracy, said, this is really becoming the standard of the GOP playbook. This is Democracy 101. If you don't have elections that are accepted and decisive, then you don't really have a democracy, because the alternative is violence or authoritarianism. They are once again doing far more than disagreeing with political strategies for running the country. Whether you believe that the Second Amendment is sacrosanct and cannot be amended or interpreted, or you believe that obviously it wasn't intended to cover fully automatic weapons. Whatever you believe, those we can disagree on that. Those aren't the pillars of a republic or a democracy. They are attacking the very foundations of what make this a country in which we vote peaceably for the people who will. And by the way, I didn't vote for Trump. I can't imagine any set of circumstances under which I would vote for Trump. But I accepted that he won, despite the fact he wouldn't have had Russia not interfered. Accepted it peacefully. And that one was rigged. So, Mike Lindell said he had proof too. Yeah. That's another reason I'm doing this. We went live when Lindell had his meeting with Trump, and nothing came of it, but it could have. And I think I'm glad we went live with that, and we're going live with this because even though it's I don't think this is a small matter. I do not. In fact, this is not a small matter. I'm not even gonna. I'm not gonna hedge that one. This is not a small matter. They already have written the response that this election they can prove it's false and that it's been rigged, despite the fact it hasn't even happened yet. I was going to say that's unprecedented. I'm not sure that's unprecedented because I don't know for a fact it hasn't been done before. They've certainly just gotten caught at it. So yeah. Well, now, okay. So catching up on the yeah. So that's it. I think Elder does know the. Right now, stats, everyone's expecting Newsom to win. These recalls, I think, have only succeeded twice in California history, if I recall. And they happen all the time at this point. I remember living in California for about 10 years, I think, maybe it was somewhere around there. And it became a joke at that point. There was a recall election every other year. It was in fact, not even every other year. So at any rate, I think... I don't know if he was trying to cheat or not. I don't know. I know that I know that right now there's a website claiming that the results are all fraudulent and that there is massive evidence of fraud, and the election hasn't happened yet. The election's tomorrow. You can't say the results are fraudulent if there are no results. I'd like to, if we can agree on just one or two tenets of reality, that would that'd be great. And I think for starters, you have to have the vote in order to have results, and you cannot declare the results fraudulent if the vote has not happened yet. I'm not willing to put that one up for negotiation. That's a hard. This is reality, and I'm not going to pretend it's not. At any rate, thank you all for joining us. Like I said, short show. I just wanted to make sure we plant that flag. We do this on occasion. We'll put out something interesting, and on more than one occasion, we've been very thankful. We have again. Somebody did bring up the Mike Lindell. Something very bad could have happened there. It didn't. I'm very glad it didn't, but I'm also very glad that we planted a flag and said this is what we know and this is what we're seeing, because that was some that was some crazy shenanigans. So we're gonna plant this flag and point out that it is now oh wow 9.5 hours before the polls open. And Newsom's challenger has proven that the results are all fraudulent. So that's it. Wanted to get that down. Thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow night. Tomorrow we're going to have an open hang. We're going to do another After Dark. Our last After Dark was plagued with technical difficulties, so I wanted to do another one. I've invited some old friends and some former guests on the show, old friends of the show. We're hoping a number of them show up. A number have already said they can. So I think it's going to be good. I'm looking forward to it. Tomorrow night, that's going to be 10 p.m., a little later. It's going to be an After Dark.